This is Jordan French. We're here with Whurley, birth name William Hurley, CEO of Honest Dollar, at his headquarters at WeWork in Austin, Texas. Whurley, thanks a lot for meeting with us.
Time to talk to me.
Thank you. Hear you're a really busy man lately, hot off the acquisition of Honest Dollar. Tell us about that.
Well, it's been pretty interesting. We launched, Honest Dollar in March of 2015 at South by. And we got some attention. We didn't really get that much, but we had a really cool idea that wasn't really validated in a lot of different places, because we're a bunch of people that aren't necessarily from finance. And so turns out, great idea, and other people think it's a great idea. And we had a choice of directions to go, both funding and acquisitions. And we elected to be acquired by Goldman Sachs in March of 2015. So it was a very short ramp for a startup. And that has kept us probably busier than we've ever been in our lives.
How did that process start with Goldman? Certainly, you don't just call them up.
Yeah, so that's funny. Ironically, I had sold another company in 2015 called Chaotic Moon, which was my previous company. It transacted to Accenture, and so I was getting a bunch of calls from wealth advisors, right? So anytime you're in tech and you sell something or you get a new job, you get those mailers, people emailing you, and they're like, "Hey, let us manage your money." I had run into a friend of a friend who is a money manager who works at Goldman Sachs. And, I was like, I have no interest, this is what I'm doing, like, this is the path. And I spent most of the time pitching her instead of her getting to pitch me. And word spread, and then they along with a bunch of other people, had been watching the press and started watching us. And then, the offer of a conversation, they called, was thrown out. And I was very excited about the potential. I'm always looking to learn. I have like a philosophy, which is you always take the meeting. Like if you're a developer, you're somebody out there, and you get a chance to interview for a job, you can always say yes, or rather no, to a job that you've been offered, but you can never say yes to a job that you never got offered for. So I believe that if you're it's not a matter of team loyalty or whatever. You always have these conversations, and so just like that, at first I was like, Goldman Sachs, that could be really interesting. Let's go see what that's about. Flew up, spent some time in New York, got to know the guys, really liked the team that we're working on. They only hire 3% of the resumes after they're cold, so it's actually harder to get a job there than it is to get into like Harvard or Yale or wherever. So it was like, well, that's interesting, and you meet a bunch of smart people. And then it was just a matter of seeing, like, are we ready to sell? Are they ready to buy? Maybe does somebody want to fund you for a little longer to see if you make it or not? Kind of where are things at? And all your standard things that get into negotiations and kind of get in the aspects of an acquisition. Fortunately, having been through a couple, I felt very prepared for this one. I'm glad this wasn't my first one, because it's a very well-known organization. They have some of the most brilliant people there, especially on the acquisition side. So the diligence on this one was considerably more difficult than the others. Not from an aspect of it was difficult, but from an aspect of they're so well prepared. And we were like, well, it's been a year, and those files are located somewhere over here. Not really sure. Do you have them? And you're like, so it was a little, it took a lot of work on our side, and they were very patient through the process and super helpful.
So let's talk about what they actually bought. So what is Honest Dollar? What did Goldman Sachs actually acquire?
So we set out to change financial services. We wanted to create a system model, a system management model, a spanning layer, if you will, across financial services. And we looked at where should we enter the market at. We picked retirement services. We picked retirement services because there's 70 million Americans in the US today that don't have access to any kind of savings, retirement kind of program. And then there's all of the gig economy and all of the 1099 workers. There's 54 million of them, right? So we thought, this is a really big market. It's clearly underserved. The people that are in this market are doing a lackluster job, in our opinion. And we said, let's go and see if we can't just get in there. It wasn't about disruption. I hate that word. It was more about displacement. We didn't want to change the flow of money through the system. We just wanted it to flow through us and make it easier and better and faster and cheaper for the users, not in quality, but of course in cost. And that was kind of what we set out to do. In the first year, we made a tremendous amount of progress. We signed up Lyft, who has a few 100,000 drivers, as a partner for the 1099 product. We signed a bunch of small businesses on the other side of the house. We continue to expand on those. So we're also eating up a bunch of the market relatively fast. So, what did they buy? They bought a best-in-class solution that is kind of unmatched from a technology basis and is making a lot of progress in the market, to which if you add a Goldman Sachs, becomes kind of unstoppable, because obviously with their connections, their knowledge of the finance industry, their knowledge of the retirement industry, all of that, it's a pretty killer combination. So it made sense from both sides.
Interesting. So you mentioned the sharing economy, and there's an issue, contemporary issue that's facing Austin right now. Can you tell us your thoughts on the recent pushback against Lyft and Uber, which have exited Austin?
It's Austin. Austin is a super cool, super chill city. So I think that they had it in the bag once it got on the ballot, and if they'd have left it alone, they probably would have won. And I think overdoing the mailers, overdoing the communications allowed the opposition to turn it into a corporate, takeover versus an actual issue. And to be blunt, I question the public safety issue from the beginning. The reason I question it is because if it's a public safety issue with Uber and Lyft drivers, how come it's not a public safety issue with favor delivery drivers or Uber Eats drivers or all the other people who don't have background checks, who don't just give you a ride somewhere, they come to your house, to your front door, right? So it's like, I didn't really grok the public safety issue. I didn't see data supporting it. So I was like, kind of questioning that. And on the other side, I question the companies themselves only from a standpoint of technology. I know if I'm those companies that it's 3 a.m. I know that you're on 6th Street. I know that you're alone, or maybe you're with, I know so much data. Why isn't that something that is just built in the app? So, you're a 19-year-old female or a 19-year-old gentleman. My son's 19. I wouldn't want somebody to pick him up either. Sitting on 6th Street, it's 3 a.m. Maybe a little inappropriate, but the potential for you to be inebriated or be with someone who's inebriated is mathematically very high. Instead of sending the guy who got approved last week or last month, why don't I send the guy or the woman to drive a woman home who's been driving for 2 or 3 years and has a perfect record? Why don't I send a text to someone, from the app and say, hey, let somebody know you're on your way, and say, here's the map. They'll be there in 15 minutes. So if I'm not there in 15 minutes and it's 40 minutes or an hour, somebody can show their concern, right? They can take some action on that. So I think it's overblown on both sides. I think that we just had an incident where a taxi driver was charged with sexual assault, who had a fingerprint. So clearly the fingerprint system doesn't even necessarily work. I'm very disappointed that they're not in the city, and I'm disappointed on all sides of the table. I guess that's really where I stand. And I hope that the mayor, Mayor Adler, who I think really did try to come up with creative solutions and everything, and Lyft and Uber can get back at the table, maybe leave the city council out of it to an extent or whatever, and kind of come up with a solution. But these things, technology solves all problems. Like, why is there a regulatory need for safety? Why isn't it, why is it fingerprinting of drivers? And this is just the system theorist in me. Instead of fingerprinting of drivers, why isn't it, hey, we require you to do some diligence on keeping people safe. You are smart technologists, like, you create some stuff and show it to us. We can tell you, we can come up with a system together. So again, disappointed on everybody in general. Disappointed that they're not here. I'll be leaving to the airport shortly after this, and I don't know who's taking me, so I have to call a friend for a ride or something, because the taxi wait's always 45 minutes. Memorial Day weekend, I'm sure it's going to be worse.
Yeah, touche, Whurley. So it begs a broader question, and that is, what is government's role with technology? Where should it fit in, whether it's in ride-sharing programs of cars, but also the FAA's obstacles with drones and the other iterations that tech shows itself?
These things are all hitting me, right? Because I use Lyft, I have drones, so this is a great topic to talk about. In my opinion, we've reached a point in society where technology so grossly outpaces the ability to regulate it that it's this is something nobody's talking about. But a couple of years ago at South by, at my previous company, Chaotic Moon, I created a taser drone. So it was $2,500 of parts. I built it in a weekend. And the reason I did that was to illustrate, like, everybody's worried about drones in general and privacy and all this. Like, here's a drone with a taser on it that we limited to 80,000 volts. This is 80,000 volts that can be semi-autonomous. They could just come and tase you because the interview or the video didn't go well. I'll be watching it when it comes out. But seriously, like, I did that to demonstrate, like, why is nobody worried about these things? Like, like, we bought these parts on a credit card and we built it in a weekend, and some smart guys wrote some software and some smart gals that we had built the hardware, and there you go. So for me, this is a much, much bigger issue than what is the role of government in regulating technology. This is an issue of, are we at a pivotal moment in the evolution of our society where technology starts outpacing it so much that they can't regulate it? That even if they do, there's something new, that the technology shifts. I mean, compute power just in the last 20 years has changed dramatically. It used to be something only governments have. You have more power in your iPhone or Android device in your pocket now than you used to have if you were an entire country. You know what I mean? If you were the military force of the country. And nobody puts these things into perspective. And it is getting faster and faster. In my industry, there's a question. Are drivers being, for companies that Lyft and Uber, are 1099 gig economy workers, are they being cheated out of benefits because they're not W-2 employees? Well, W-2 employees pay for their benefits, right? So now there's other arguments, and I've been to Washington and spent a lot of time there, and there are other concerns. But on that concern, it's like, wait a second, benefits aren't free, right? So why is this a regulatory issue? Why isn't this a free market issue? Where somebody should come up with a product for these 1099 workers, which is what we did with the 1099 retirement plan that we have, that's better, faster, cheaper, and is actually more advantageous for those people. The workforce is changing in dramatic ways. Regulation is being affected in dramatic ways. Technology is outpacing all of these things. It used to be you went to work at 8 and you left at 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever. Now, a stay-at-home dad, and I know a guy, he's a real world example. He goes, boom, he happens to drive for Uber, he hits it, he goes, picks up people from the airport in the morning, comes back, takes the kids to school, his daughter gets sick, he presses the magic button, he's off work, right? Goes home, takes care of his family, wife comes home, presses the magic button, he's back out making money. That's an incredible freedom. And I hope that regulatory systems don't, curtail that freedom. But also, I hope that we, as technologists, work with regulators proactively instead of reactively to help find, where's the happy medium, where's the need for regulation, how do we work together to make sure that it's not only effective regulation, but that it's not just this back and forth arms race. Because the way I see it now is technologists create something, regulatory people come in and try to regulate it, so they just create something else, so then they have to regulate that, and it's kind of an arms race that leads to nowhere, right? It's a zero-sum game. And so it's up to us as creators of technology to proactively go out and evangelize what we're doing and work with regulators so that it's not a knee-jerk reaction from them or from us.
Do you have any advice then, particularly pointed towards governments, about how they should tackle these issues?
Well, it's funny you asked that because I'm actually working on a couple of projects. So I just got back from Geneva, Switzerland, and I was at Geneva speaking at the United Nations at the 150th anniversary of what's called the ITU. And part of what I was speaking about is innovation, right? Because governments want to be innovative. They get it. Regulators want to be innovative, right? Everybody wants to be innovative. They're like, how do we make things better? And so, although innovation is this buzzword right now, we take that opportunity as technologists, and we can do great things. I just went and spoke to 192 member nations, to the people that are setting forth tech policy, the people that are setting forth the UN initiatives, all these things, and I had the opportunity to evangelize to them how we work better together, right? Now, not everybody gets that opportunity, I get that, but your city council works for you. The mayor was elected by the people. The state representatives are elected by the people. You can get meetings with these people, and technologists especially, because we have a card we can play that nobody else. We're like, oh, cool hot technology startup thing. Every politician, every elected official will want to talk to you, right? They do. So people need to get more audience with them and evangelize. And on the government side, the advice is take those meetings, right? And for governments, I guess the best advice I give is there's a difference between reaction and response. Reaction is involuntary and response is voluntary. And a lot of times with the regulation where you run into problems is when it's reactive. When you react to something, it's more of an emotional response. It's this quick need, antenna gate, great example. Steve Jobs didn't come out and say like, you're all right, there's a problem or whatever. He didn't respond for a very long period of time. And when he did, he basically came out and said, I fixed a cell phone. I have to fix all the infrastructure behind it too. I guess so. Here's my $100 million antenna research facility, and a bunch of evidence and stuff. That was brilliant. Whether you agree that he was right about the problem or wrong, you cannot deny it. That was a calculated, measured response. And when you do that, you have a better conversation. Because when I react emotionally, then you react emotionally, right? And it barrels out of control. So, I think if the regulators were proactive in talking to tech people, if they practiced response, not reaction, when there is a regulatory concern, and if they involved not only the tech people more on their side, but involved themselves on that side too. Why didn't the regulators say, hey, we've got a safety problem, how would you propose we fix it? That's a fine place to start. They can always throw the regulatory gavel down. Why didn't they start with like, hey, here's a problem. We're going to say you do business in our city or our state or our country. You show us how you're going to address this problem, make us happy. And let them take the first stab as technologists, as this creative class of people to solve the problem. On the topic of Lyft and Uber in Austin, everyone, I believe, deserves some blame for not necessarily handling that in the most adult fashion. And I kind of said, I called it childish on Twitter, but it's like, we're going to kick you out if you don't do this. Well, we're going to leave if you don't do that. Well, I'm not going to fund companies if this happens or that happens. And everybody, it just kind of went downhill. And I think it's like ultimatums in a relationship. If you're in a relationship, the last thing you want to tell the other person is, this happens or else. Because we all know exactly what happens. Then they go, or else, right? Like ultimatums aren't good. So I think everyone could have done a much better job of handling that. And good news, hit a reset button. We can all start doing a better job right now. There's no reason that problem can't be, the safety issue can't be addressed, the fingerprinting issue, what the company needs, what the riders need. There's no reason everybody can't come together and fix that.
Yeah, the opportunity is still there. The technology is still there. So
Yeah.
Until it goes away, still can proceed. So back to our question though is, you do have some political ties, and one particularly people recognize is important. That's to President Obama, whom you invited a few months ago. Tell us about that and what you typically talk with him about.
So, I was about to say I don't talk to him a lot. I'm actually going to be at another event in Florida this week, so it's like I talk to him more than I guess I should. I don't know. There was this idea of a president coming to South by, and there was a team of people involved in this. My part was kind of counterpart to you, Forrest. He's done an amazing job bringing some incredible speakers into town. He's been trying to get the president for a while, and there was an opportunity for a bunch of tech people to meet with the president. There was a bunch of great opportunities, and so everybody kind of worked together to try to figure out, how do you get this? How do you schedule it? What do you do? For my part, I basically had kind of one of the easier parts, right? Which I kind of hosted a party. We had J. Cole and did some music and gave a speech, and everybody had fun. There was Q bringing him to South by, proper setting up a venue, finding security stuff. There was all the stuff I did. How do we get him over and get an audience that doesn't have South by tickets to have an opportunity to see him? And then there was a private dinner later that evening where some leaders in the community were able to sit down and hear about issues on the national front and talk about even local and state issues, right? So it was a very, very interesting set of conversations. Unfortunately, if you were at one, you probably didn't get to go to the other. For example, I didn't get to go to South by, and you didn't get to come to my event because of the logistics of all the traffic stops, and you get the president from one space to the other. The best part about the president coming was my wife, who will kill me for this being in the interview, but she never watches any of my stuff anyway, so honey, you're not gonna know. But we got to ride in the motorcade from the Austin Music Hall to the dinner, and it is surreal because there are no cars in the street. There's people lined up everywhere, right? Thousands of people. And so, we went down Cesar Chavez, and there's like these boats coming on the side, and everybody's on it, and there's helicopters or whatever, and it's just unbelievably surreal. And as we're going, I keep looking at my wife, thinking, and we're kind of getting in the neighborhoods, and I took my camera and I held it up and I said, I filmed a video and I go, hey baby, can I ask you a question? She's like, yeah. And I turned to her and I'm like, are you waving? And so, because all the people were waving, she's like, Princess waving the whole time. I was like, they're not waving at us. But it was hilarious. And she laughed. She's like, I don't know. Everybody's waving at us. So, and it wasn't just her. It's like all the people in the car are like waving. It's like, they're not waving at us. But it was, an amazing opportunity to host the president at South by. I hope that we can have future presidents come to South by. I hope that's set a precedent. We talked about regulatory issues. It'd be great to see congressmen and congresswomen and senators come to South by from all over the nation and participate more. One of the things I thought about is, could we put a track at South by, not a track, but kind of a special event that was around just getting regulators and tech people together. It seems like a great place to do it. It's a great time of year in Austin. So, hopefully the president has set a tone for a very high level, the highest level in the land officials coming and participating in the event. Maybe we could use that to foster more participation.
That's neat. I think everyone in Austin's happy that you did that and that you're doing that. Let's go back to your own story, because you've been an inspiration, I think, to a number of entrepreneurs and folks in technology, particularly with your background, which started out as a bass player.
Yeah.
And you're one of the cohort that seems to be growing that doesn't necessarily have hyper advanced degrees or anything that people otherwise would take from conventional wisdom.
I've always, I have a 19-year-old son right now, right? So does my son go to college, or does he start a company? And the path we've together chosen is he starts a company. He'll learn more faster, that I think will be more useful doing that than he will going to school. Now, that said, I'm also on the advisory board of the Innovation Center at the Cockrell School of Engineering here at the University of Texas with my good friend Bob Metcalf. I think we're still friends because I think politically we're maybe a little bit off. But Bob invited me to participate in that, and Bob and I are like technology's odd couple. He is like the super educated, unbelievably successful, just phenomenal human being, and I'm like, kid from the street, high school education, doesn't give a shit about all of that, right? So it's like it's really interesting dynamic, and we have a lot of great conversations. And one of the conversations that we had maybe a South by or two ago is we did kind of this event where we talked to each other and we kind of compared and contrast this exact issue. I personally believe that the majority of answers to society's problems are in the minds of people somewhere already. And I think that the answers sometimes come from the least likely place. So, for me, I think, my career is what my career is. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no way to be like, yes, I'm a brilliant genius. I set out to do this. I just kind of randomly have done cool stuff, and I don't really believe in obstacles. I think anybody can do anything. So I just kind of, I don't know it, I learn it. It's not, there's nothing there. Anybody can do everything I've done. That's kind of my philosophy. But college versus no college, education versus no education. I think it would be better if we took some college curriculum and moved it down into the high schools, and the high school curriculums down in the middle schools for the U.S. as a whole, than it would be to try to get more kids into college. College is really expensive. There's $1 trillion in student loan debt out there. It's an industry, right? Why aren't we pushing those things more into the public schools that the kids are already in? Why aren't we enlightening those minds at the point where we have them and we have them captive? Or at least that's how I view high school as. It's like being in a prison camp. But why aren't we doing that? Why are we not doing more vocational preparation for the kids who don't want to be scientists or whatever? There's nothing wrong with that. We need all of those people. I took auto mechanics, for example, in high school. I thought that was amazing, right? I wasn't necessarily great at it or whatever, but it's like that was interesting that there was that option. I wasn't the super mathematician. I wasn't at the time going to be some brilliant scientist, but it's like, here are all these other things you could do that are like hard skills that are very valuable. It's a tough question. It's something that I think in Europe a lot of my friends, their kids graduate high school, they take a year off, and they just travel around Europe. And I find that those are really well-rounded kids. And if they do go to college, they perform better, right? It's like, I don't know, there's like this incubation period of like, now you're becoming an adult, And so I think, doing something like that would be very cool in the US, where it's like, hey, here's a great plan. Your kid gets out of high school, don't immediately drop them off at the college, instead of spending however many tens of thousands of dollars on the semester, take, that money and say, here's what you're going to do for the next year. You're going to go learn about different stuff. Send them to Europe, send them to Latin America, send them somewhere and let them get some experience and let them do something they have some guide in their life. One of the flaws in the college system, I think, is we take the high school kids, we put them right into college and they take all the core curriculum. It's great. They just did that at high school. They're not learning any new schools, any new real skills, and they're not necessarily getting excited. Now, every college is different. And every program is different, and every child is different. It's not to say college is bad, but by the way, not going to college is also not bad. It's worked out for Michael Dell and me and Bill Gates and tons of people that either went and dropped out or didn't go. So I think it's kind of to each their own, and I think you just have to pick your own path. For me, if I'm going to invest tens of thousands of dollars in my son, I'd rather invest in him learning how to be an entrepreneur than I would in him going and learning a bunch of stuff. But to be frank, there's a lot of other places to learn from now. Some of the classes he wants, they're on MIT's open source, library. So it's like, great, I don't need to send you anywhere paying money. You can do that at home. So it's a touchy topic because I wish I had gone to college, but at the same time, I have no problem with the fact that I didn't, or that my kids may or may not either.
Yeah, that's part of the innovation is what MIT did, which was offering courses online.
It's fantastic.
Even years ago, a controversial move in a way. Let's wrap up on fintech, which Honest Dollar is certainly a part of. Where do you see that proliferating? Where do you see the big changes in integrating technology to move the needle and make everyone's lives better with finances and investment?
That's a great question. So why did I personally do Honest Dollar? Like, what does Honest Dollar do? It's pretty simple to explain. Why did I go from mind control skateboards and taser drones to finance, right? Some people who talk to you say it's like, oh, there's a lot of money in finance. That sure, I wanted to start something where it's an industry where I could make money. I'm an entrepreneur. That's what I do. But more importantly, it's an industry that's ripe for disruption. And most importantly, it's an industry that touches every single person's life. So I wanted to start a business that I could affect all of the people I see here at WeWork and out on the street in Austin and when I travel and at the airport. I could touch their lives in some meaningful way. That's a really awesome project, right? So that was number one. Finance is something everybody needs. And not just here, globally, everywhere. Or lack of finance. Somehow finance is affecting your life in some way. So I was very interested in that, and I was very interested in the potential to not disrupt and muddy the water, but displace the financial system, to create new and innovative ways to do things that improve people's lives, that gave access people to more capital, right? That gave people the ability to manage their finances better. And we focused in on the retirement area, but the retirement area is one of hundreds of places that are about to completely change. I believe that here in 2016 is effectively for finance and fintech being in 2006 with the iPhone, right? I believe that there's going to be, and I hope that our platform is a huge part of that, these couple of things that happen, the phone, the mobile apps, the thing that happen in finance that just dramatically change it, where all of the players that are in charge now probably aren't in charge, in 2021. Where all the technologies are probably different. I mean, if we went back in a time machine and said 10 years ago, you're going to do all your email on your phone. It's not going to be a BlackBerry. You're going to pay bills. You're going to be able to magically just hail a car. You can have groceries delivered. You can do all these things. People have been like, oh, that sounds like a really cool future. But a lot of people didn't invest in these things and didn't believe in these things. If you'd have said Apple would have been, one of the largest controllers, one of the largest players, $230 billion in cash, short-term assets, somewhere right around there. In the telecommunications industry. I mean, people did laugh at that. You can go Google articles. They're like, what are they going to do? They build a phone, have it on one carrier? Who's going to be AT&T? That's laughable, right? I mean, the fact is we're in that time period in fintech because, a whole series of things have come together to make that happen. Number one, the technology is more rampant, not just software technology, but hardware technology. Number two, entrepreneurs aren't afraid of regulatory rules anymore. I mean, it used to be regulatory, ooh, that sounds like work. Now people are like, let's dig into that. Do we need it? People are lobbying. People are visiting DC. They're getting involved in the political side of the house. Number three, everyone is disappointed in some way, shape, or form, including the incumbents in the financial system we have. Everybody talks about the 99% versus 1%. Yeah, sure. There's disparity in wealth, and there's all these things. The fact is no matter where you're at, you're not living in that other person's shoe. And every single one of us, no matter where we're at financially, has something we would like to change about the financial system. So I think all of those things combined have created this environment that is feeding that change, that need for change, that acceptance. I mean, just think about checks. Pre-iPhone, you still, just 10 years ago, just 5 years ago for a lot of people, went to the bank, a physical piece of paper, to put it in there in exchange for cash. And now you can write me a check, and I can take a photo of it, and then I'll laugh about why do you have checks, because you could have PayPal or this or that or any one of 100 other ways you could have given me, that same money. So, people getting more comfortable with that technology is changing it. The system itself getting more comfortable with that technology is changing it. And the need for change. I mean, the average American that a $400 or $500 expense would be bankrupt. That should scare everyone. It doesn't matter how rich you are. That's bad. Millions of people not working, very bad, right? Millions of people bankrupt, really, really bad. And so I feel like everybody now feels this responsibility for their role in the system, be it a large incumbent, or be it somebody who is creating technology, or be it somebody who's using it. I mean, one of the wonderful things about Honest Dollar was how many people were willing to talk to us about their retirement. People don't think about their retirement ever. They think about that less than they do vacation, which is not a lot for most people. So the fact that we were like, hey, we're going to change this, and so many people gave us feedback. They were excited. They were like, oh, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. I'd put money in if it were in a way that I could take it back out easy, or whatever the case was. That was phenomenal. We wouldn't be where we were without those users. We wouldn't be where we were without the people in DC being like, hey, this is an interesting problem you're solving. Talk to us about this. How could we help? It's like, well, I don't know that you can, but we want to have the conversation, right? It wouldn't have been interesting without the investors we had. John Soberg, who was an amazing investor, Vikram Pandit, who was the CEO of Citi, and was like, this is an awesome opportunity. So you've got all of these people. It doesn't matter if you're a user, an investor, a venture capitalist. It doesn't matter if you're in politics, or if you work at a large company like Goldman Sachs. Everyone is interested in what's next in this area. So again, I think fintech is to 2016 what the iPhone was to 2006, 2007. I think that's incredibly exciting.
We're all excited too.